I just have a few slides that I want to go over, and then we're going to jump right into a demo. All right, so this session is going to be talking about shared elements in both 4.2 and 4.3. All right, so first off, what is a shared element? It's any part of a report, so it could be a table, a chart, a logo, any of that, and they are stored in the BusinessObjects repository for reuse. So if you have created something very cool in a report, it might be a great idea to let others reuse that. And I'm going to show you some good use case scenarios for that today. Shared elements can be used to create a new report or added to existing reports by simply dragging and dropping the objects into the report. It's very easy. All right, so once you add in a shared element, let's say it's a chart or a table, what exactly is brought in with that? I want to go over those real quick. So the report element is brought in and it includes all of its formatted properties with it, all right? It includes the objects assigned to that report element. So for example, all the dimensions, all the measures that are used in creating that chart or table will be brought in. Any variables that are used in that report element will also be brought in, which is very cool to be able to reuse those variables. And then all the queries used for that report element will be brought in as well. And I'll show you that. And then what's not loaded, the actual data. So in the sense that, let's say a chart is showing, say, revenue for a particular state or regions. And if you added that to your report and yet you don't have rights to view that, it would not display data. So the reason why it doesn't bring in the data is so that security can be applied when you bring it in. So when a shared element is brought in, at that moment, it silently runs a query to fetch the data, and then based on your security, displays the data that you're allowed to view. All right. Input controls that are used on shared elements are not brought in. Time dimensions are not supported yet. And I tested it out again in 4.3. It's still not supported yet in 4.3 either. An interesting thing that they have just not updated yet. Pardon me. And then comments attached to a shared element are not included. Couple of downsides. It's not supported in SAP HANA Online mode. And then I also wanted to mention to be aware of migration with dependent objects. So for example, if you have a report and it has a shared element in it, and in the migration of that report from, let's say, your dev environment or your QA environment to prod, and you say bring in all the dependencies, well, it would include any other reports that are using that. And so just keep that in mind. For example, if you use a logo, a common scenario would be to use a logo. And if you bring in a report and say, I want to bring in all the objects, including all the dependent objects, it might bring in many more reports than you expect to get. So just be aware of that. All right, and then you can auto update your shared elements in the document property. And I'll show you where this is in the report as well in 4.2 and 4.3. So this is a picture of the 4.2 document properties, and you can check the box here to say check for to update any shared elements on open, and check for shared element updates on open, and update shared elements on open. Okay, so that if you just have this one checked, that'll check and look and indicate on the report that there's an update. or you can say just always update it if there's an update. All right, and I'll go through in the demo what those changes, what you would see in real life, okay? This is a picture of 4.3. The shared elements are showed in the main panel on the right. This is the symbol, very similar to what is used in 4.3. And then if anything needed to be updated, it would show in a different color here, and you could click the update button and it would update that. Okay, we're ready for the demo now. So let me get out of my slides, log back in. We'll start off with 4.2. All right, and I have several shared elements here. I'm going to start off with just a blank report to show you how it brings in no data. The no data source option switched from being the first object in 4.2 to the bottom object in 4.3. So that's why my mouse went that direction. All right, so we have a blank report with no queries, right? So over here on the left panel, I'm going to click on the shared elements, and I'm going to click on the browse option here and expand. I have some here in my favorites, and then I also have some here in this folder for a book. The first one I want to bring in is this poly trend line variables, and might look like just a simple column line chart, right? But actually it's using a lot of formulas to get this poly Y trend on here. And let me switch to the variables here. So these are the objects that it brought in, and look at all these variables that it used to be able to build this object. That's a lot of variables used to just get, it's only displaying a measure and a dimension on here, right? But all of those were needed. And so there's quite a bit of complex logic going on in here. And if you figured this out once, it would be great to be able to reuse that. I'm going to come back to this chart in a few minutes, but I wanted to start off with that and show you how it brought in the objects. And of course, here are the objects in my query. It was query 2 in the report that came from, and so it kept that name as well. All right, I'm going to move this report name up into my header up there for now and add some more shared elements. I'll go to browse, and I'm going to bring in this state orders and just drop it on here. And just the size a little bit here. I'm going to move it over to the left. Where I moved it to. Okay. All right. So I have my map here. I'm going to make some changes on the original map in just a few minutes, but we'll start off with that. I'll add a few more items to my report here. One of the things that I have is this SVG logo. So we showed how to create this SVG in our Webby dashboarding class. And if you'll see, it's really just a lot of text in here, quite a bit of text to display this SVG. But the nice thing, it's super adjustable in size there. So that's one of the cool things about SVGs. So it was created once. I can reuse it in my report and resize it to fit in my report if I wanted. All right, let's bring in, I have this in my consultants, in this AD Boker folder. I have this year-over-year trend that I wanted to add to my report. So this one is showing the trends based on the previous year, whether the trend is moving up or moving down, and showing these indicators on there. And so since this took a bit to create, I wanted to save it as a shared element that could be reused at any time if we wanted to. All right. And then I'm going to add, say, our logo here, but I'm going to put it up in my header. And it's kind of a big one. So I'm going to increase that and drop a logo up here. It's just a cute little bear with a coffee mug. Right? Come on. There we go. All right. So now that I have these on here, what happens if things change? Notice in my shared elements over here, if I switch to the currently used, it's listing all of them in here and it has a revision number that it's showing there. All right. So now I'm going to open up this orders by state map. And let's say I make a change to this. In this case, let's say I switch out the measure and switch it to use my revenue instead of number of orders. So I'm going to go to assign data and just switch to revenue. I'll click OK and save that change. However, I need, as a shared element, if I want it to update in the report, I'm going to save it as a shared element again. So my shared element here, I'm going to go to linking, save as a shared element, and I'll save it on top of the previous state orders here, which now it's not orders, it's actually revenue, but I want you to see the change. So if I come back to my document here, now I'm going to refresh my report a little here. All right, my state orders. I wonder if that, let me see, did I save it over the right one? Linking. My favorites. There. All right, now back in my documents here. Oh, you see this little symbol here? That's indicating to me that there's some updates in here. So I'm going to click on here, check for new revisions, and it's telling me state orders. I actually saved it twice, right? So now revision 8 is out there, and I could click on this and click update. And now my chart is showing revenue instead of number of orders. Okay, so that is how an object can be updated. I wanted to show also, let's say this polytrend chart here. Let's talk about that for a moment. Like I mentioned, once you have something cool in your report, you might want to use it, but then modify it to fit the needs of the current report. So let's say, actually, instead of it showing it by product name, I want to switch it to use the months, order months instead. So I'm going to first unlink it as a shared element. So I'm going to click on my polytrend and unlink it. And when I do, you see it just disappears from this list. And so now it's just part of this report, and I can start making adjustments. And in this case, I'm going to change this one variable here to use order month. Okay. And then adjust the objects used in the chart. Instead of product name, I'll use order month. And I'm also going to use order month number so that I can sort quickly on that. So notice how it starts with April. I'll change the sort real quick to use order month number for the sort. And now we have January through December. So I still have all the complex logic, and I just swapped out the dimension used for displaying in the chart. I didn't have to do any of that work. It was very quick. Just swap out the dimension. You could also swap out the measure if you want it as well. All right. Before I go any further, let's switch over to save this just in case. Demo 1. All right. And save. All right, I switched over to my here is 4.3. I'll again start off with a blank document. So I'll come to my Home tab and select Applications and Web Intelligence. And here's no data source. Okay. So from here, the way we would start adding shared elements is from the Insert menu option on the toolbar and the ellipses here. So shared element. And then this is what I love about 4.3. Look here, it knows I'm looking for shared elements. And so it pulls up all the shared elements that I have rights to view. I've got 2 in my folders and I've got 6 in public folders. If I switch to the public folders, it's showing ones that are in my folder, and then this one, this SAP logo that's in there, the Webby samples folder. So I don't have to go hunting, or it's just, it brings up the exact things that I want. I love that about 4.3. All right, so in this case, I'm going to come to my favorites here. I'm going to add this donut chart. And click Insert and drop it right there. And then I'll add a couple more. I'll add this funnel chart. And I'm going to insert from my public folders here. I'll insert this column line chart. All right, so I wanted to talk about how changes are displayed on here. I could, of course, filter on here. The objects are just part of your report. So I can select the objects in here. I could make changes to the objects here. I could delete them if I wanted to. I could, again, when things change in the report, I could also display that here. So let me show you the original report that this donut chart came from. I have this report here. And this one here. So let's say I'll switch to design mode, and it already has a filter. I'm going to modify that filter and choose a different product group. I'll switch to video. Then I'm also going to change the palette so that you can see the color formatting changes on there. So that's filtered by the product group, and then I'll switch to a different palette on here. All right, so now if I right click on the chart, and go to shared elements, I can save it as, and I'll save it over top of the donut chart that was in my favorites, and say save. Okay, and then in my other report, more than one open here. Here we go. Now, if I look at my shared elements on the right panel here, notice that the donut chart, you see the symbol there? It says it has an update. If I hover over the object here, that's where it's going to show me the revision. What's actually in here is revision 5, but the server has a more updated revision of revision 6. And I could click that and say update, and it would go back and fetch the latest. And it's showing the new filter and the new colors on there. And then I'll show you in the document properties in 4.3, so document options. And here's the option to update shared elements on open. Okay, so much that you could do in here. I'm gonna add another report tab just real quick to show you. I'm gonna bring in a shared element. This one, orders by state with targets. The reason why I want to show you this is it's just a simple table, but it actually is a table that has universe data and an Excel spreadsheet. So if I switch to my queries now, you'll see that I have multiple queries here. This is the first one that had the original objects. My query 1 has part of the data on here. And then my target, this is the Excel spreadsheet. You'll notice also, though, that see how this is the target data. So it didn't automatically merge the dimensions. I would still have to come in here and redo the merges in here, but it does bring in all the data. So there's a little bit of work I'd have to do for that to remerge the data, but I wanted to mention that it brings in universe data and non-universe data. All right, I think I have time for one other that I wanted to show real quick. Over here, I have a shared element. So for our class, the Webby dashboard class, we show how to create this. I didn't really want it in the header down here. So this is just HTML buttons, which we show you how to do and set this up in the class. But we also made it dynamic so that if I rename this report tab and the variables that are used in this, it will automatically work in this report and I don't have to redo the work. So I'm going to change this report tab to orders, and I'll quickly add another report tab. I can find my mouse. Add report, which we'll call data. And then I'm going to add a quick little table on here. And just what I need in here is to find out the report ID. So I'm just putting any text in here so that I can use the inter-document linking in order to find out what that tab's report ID is. So see, tab 2 is using report ID 86. Tab 1 is using report ID 5. So now I'm going to go back to my variables here. I have report name 1, which on the original object was main. I'll rename it to orders here and say okay. And report name 2, I'll rename to data or detail or some, yeah, I called it data. So see how this picked it up already, but I need to modify report 1 here should be 5, and then it's in 2 locations in this text here. So report 5 there, and the other one was 86, I think. All right, let's see. So now, yep, that took me to tab 2. Now I need to copy that over the whole thing. I'll copy it here, go to my tab 2, paste it in here, and I could delete this. And then I would just need to adjust the column width here so the data fits. Oops. But you get the idea here. So completely, even though you have a custom component that you developed here, now it can be applied and used in your other reports as well. Okay, if I adjust the column size on these, then you see that it's being used. Yeah. And
so Roxanne, we have a question came in from Ann Patterson at Meritage Homes. She's sandboxing 4.3 right now, and she found that the inter-document links created in 4.2 SP7 need to be updated when they move to 4.3. Are you finding the same?
I haven't worked a whole lot with migrated documents, but that's interesting. Yeah, it's kind of not surprising since it's using that report ID. And that in the new environment, depending on how many documents or content is in the other environment, I can see that it would change that report ID. That's an interesting point. Thank you, Anne, for bringing that up. So you might have to adjust these again.
Yeah, and kind of followed up on that and said that she thinks it's more than the ID, it's the syntax.
The syntax. Let's see. Let's compare. I can switch over to 4.3. And if we have table.
Yeah, further to that, and added that she believes it might be called out in the notes for patch 300 something about HTML links.
Oh, that is interesting. It does look different. And in fact, I don't even see a report number there. That is interesting. So maybe it's going by the actual name. I'm not sure. That is, you're right. You're absolutely right, Anne, that syntax is different. I deleted the little table that I had there, but it is definitely different. This, of course, is all stuff that we added into creating the buttons. So won't look the same, but that little table that I had created on this tab would have shown the inter-document link. So, good point.
Yeah, so Anne just wanted to point out that the links will not work until you modify and update.
Uh-huh. Well, that's too bad. Inter-document link, we waited for such a long time for that to show up for us. Yep, that's a very different call. Yep. Very interesting.
Oh, that's something to add to tips and tricks.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, Anne.
Thank you, Anne. Thank you, Anne. Thank you.
Any other questions?
I don't see any others at this time. I'm just checking the chat as well. But I always enjoy sessions on shared elements because I feel that it's been very underutilized in 4.2. Hoping to see more people making use of it when they realize that actually if they created themselves a nice library of reusable components, in the form of shared elements, they could bring in a whole new group of users to just pull reports together without having to do very much except drag and drop different shared elements into their reports.
Yep.
So love to see more usage of that. So thank you so much. That was awesome.